you've already briefly kind of talked about some of the stuff where he lied about his credentials. Do you want to briefly lay out all the issues? So that's one of the issues, but there's so many more. Do you want to kind of sketch an outline of that for people? So people that might watch this to have no idea of anything that's going on.
The book's called Cover. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would say just for those people, just briefly sketch out all the issues that are really curious.
So the book is called Cover Up in the Kingdom. So that tells you a lot about what I was upset about when I wrote it, because the evidence is absolutely clear. I don't think Ravi's ministry will even dispute this anymore. Ravi lied about his academic credentials. He claimed to be a professor at Oxford. This is one of the most bold and blatantly false claims he ever made. To call yourself a professor at Oxford, that means you are at the pinnacle of your academic field. He was never a professor at Oxford. He never had any paid teaching position or any formal teaching position at Oxford. But even though he claimed this for himself, and you can see him, he tells audiences this, it's at his website for several years. Nobody called him on it. Same thing for him saying that he studied quantum physics at Cambridge or that he's Cambridge educated. Absolutely false. And none of his Christian colleagues, not a single person, ever spoke out publicly against him. And I think that's really one of the most important things that the Ravi Zacharias experience should be teaching us. There was a code of silence, and there is a code of silence amongst highly placed evangelicals. They don't want to expose each other's dirt, so people get away with the most brazen deceptions. And that's really got to change, and Ravi's helping us see that. Mm-hmm. I discussed the credential stuff in the book in great detail. There's over 250 footnotes in the book, and my emails to Cambridge and Oxford. People who are nerdy about the details will like that stuff. But there's also a sexual grooming scandal that Ravi got himself into in 2015 and 2016. He had been involved with a married Canadian woman, but in an online relationship where it seems pretty clear that he was grooming her, building trust with her, and then turning the relationship sexual to where Ravi admits that he received sexual and nude photos from this woman. And in October of 2016, she'd had enough. She felt guilty about it, and she emailed Ravi from her therapist's office, actually, and said, "I'm going to tell my husband tonight." And Ravi wrote back with what's now the well-known suicide threat. He told her that if she told her husband that he would bid this world goodbye. Ravi has privately admitted sending this suicide note, but he refused to talk about it in public. So we've got this prominent evangelist who Mike Pence said is the greatest apologist of our century, actually getting involved online with a married woman in what was a power imbalance of a relationship, an abusive kind of thing. They never were physically together alone, but you've got this powerful minister threatening suicide to keep that woman from taking necessary steps to repair her marriage. This is really, really scandalous. And despite that came to light in 2017. Ravi went to the rest of his life signing new book contracts, maintaining a busy speaking career, traveling all over the world, winning apologetics and missions awards. And this really says something truly disturbing about the evangelical business empire.
Oh, so there was also, I guess it was more recent, the massage parlor stuff. Do you want to talk about, because we got to the suicide note and then there's even more stuff. Do you want to explain that?
If there's one thing I would encourage your viewers to do, just go to Google and type in Ravi Zacharias spa. And it's really encouraging because for the first time in the 5.5 years that I've been doing this, we're seeing Christian journalists step up to the plate and start printing the difficult stuff, the difficult stories. So there's just been a whole slew of good Christian investigative journalism and other publications coming forward and sharing the story, even though it's ugly and it's disturbing. So that's really encouraging. Google Ravi Zacharias spa. But in a nutshell, in May of this year, right around the time Ravi died, I got an email from a woman telling me very disturbing stuff about what Ravi had done to her in the massage spas. And she told me that he was an owner of the spas. And I looked into it and she seemed credible, but I decided I can't go anywhere with this story because nobody's going to believe that Ravi Zacharias was involved in the massage business. And I, as an atheist, I've been the main one exposing Ravi. I have zero credibility in the Christian world. And if I come out with a story that I can't back up saying he was in the massage spas, it's just going to make me look really bad and no one's going to believe it. So I just sat on it. I didn't do anything about it. Then on July 14th, I got a call at my office from a guy named Anurag Sharma. I'd never heard of the guy. So I called him back. I was at home that day. And we spoke for a long time, and he had called me, told me he was a good friend of Ravi's, that he traveled with Ravi for a few decades and had been in business with Ravi. But this gentleman wanted to speak to me about spiritual matters. He didn't want to talk to me about Ravi. He didn't want to answer my questions about Ravi. It was about spiritual matters. At the end of the phone call, just out of the blue, I said to him, Mr. Sharma, before you go, let me ask you one last question. Do you know anything about Ravi being in the massage business? Mr. Sharma's answer was, I remember it very well, I was in the massage business with Ravi.
Oh, wow.
He provided me proof, and from there I was able to go find another victim of Ravi who I spoke to, and Ravi had repeatedly exposed himself to her during treatments at the spa. And I then shared this information. There was another a Christian scholar who was working on this with me. All three of the witnesses I spoke to, I interviewed, after that spoke to this Christian leader so that I would have backup. It wouldn't just be me, the crazy banjo atheist making it up. And so they spoke to this Christian scholar, and then they spoke to Christianity Today. And Christianity Today did a really thorough job of investigating this. So there's now some really first-rate investigative journalism coming out about Ravi Zacharias and his ownership in the spas and his out-of-control sexual predator practices. I would never have believed 5 years ago when I first began looking into his relatively innocuous credential silliness about whether he's a doctor or just an honorary doctor. I never would have thought I'd be publicly calling him a sexual predator. It would never have crossed my mind. And it's absolutely shocking, but that's what he was. And the evidence is now really clear